to do. Let's turn this into a movement. Buy a book for yourself, buy a book for a friend, buy a book for someone you know. Don't buy it because you think they are corrupt and they need to read it. Buy it because you want this discussion to begin going out. I'm envisioning a situation
to Dr. Ann and Senator after the challenge. This is yours, President Havi. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, we also vice in Kenya. So my music, are we on cue? Drum roll. On 1, 2, 3. Makofi as we unveil corruption in Africa. Makofi tafadhali, Makofi tafadhali. Awesome. Let's go. Woo! As we celebrate this is our voice, and that is why we are here. Music, please. Let us celebrate this book. Awesome, awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And thank you so much for the challenge. Maybe, Senator, you'd like to say something as we finalize on this?
I think I've said more than enough, but this is the moment we have all been waiting for. Congratulations. So that you can commit yourself from now henceforth to be the ambassador for anti-corruption solutions.
As we take photos.
And as they continue taking the photos, I just want to mention something serious issues as this. Purpose Driven came here and we all rallied and we created discussion guides and we had meetings in our churches for 40 weeks.
Okay, we've been told that we need to take down our masks. Oh, yes, for the optics, yes. Yes. Hold your breath anyway. Okay. Please, can you move closer to the, yes, closer. Yes, and closer that way. Awesome. Pass your, and next, yes, and then, yes. And then
Home fellowship, home Bible study, and created discussion points and guidelines. I'm challenging that challenge. The next step is to create discussion guides. Let schools to do weekend challenges. They're always open, inviting people into a movement. Let's have dialogues all over the place. So thank you again. God bless you. And let the conversation begin. If you need to get in touch, there's information in the. Can we take this conversation there and have it with kids before they even graduate? I'm thinking about kids that we met in high school.
We just take some photos. And for those of us who, as you are coming in, as you made your payment, for the cocktail along with the book, there's some 2 ladies outside who will guide you on how you can collect your book. For those who want to purchase, the same ladies, I think, will be able to. With her, Senator, you can accord us a few minutes. I'm sure there's people who want to maybe take photos with you and Dr. Ann as well, and President Havi.
Please. About this book, I just told him, I need 5 chapters put together in an African map. Because I didn't want, writing corruption is difficult. So we wanted to present Africa looking nice after corruption. That's what that map looks like. And more
with somebody else maybe who doesn't have a copy. Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you so much. The book is autographed, and for us, issue the guests, and then we'll talk about how we'll also get our autographed books for those who want to buy. Bishop Kyoya and his wife's books, thank you so much. Thank you so much. Next is
just connecting with you, and you've made this event a success. Monica, back to you.
For prayer, and I don't know whether I should call an altar call like this. After such
Asante sana. Thank you so much. So at this point, I'll invite Ann. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you. Thank you so much. And President as well. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for spreading the word. Asante, asante. All right, let us have
that we continue to demystify corruption. We call it kitu kidogo. That feels nicer. We call it chai. It's not as bad. We call it salamu. It's not as bad. I don't know what other name we call it, but when we use influence, and when you have those three things, you can turn the turbine. It is true, corruption is an issue that touches both the citizens and the leaders. But if you're in a position of power, resources, and you have influence, then you have more at stake. When Kenya and Singapore got independent, those two countries had very close economic, GDP. That was almost the same range. Today, Singapore is among the top, I think the third is the third. And I can tell you, when you look through and study, the biggest problem is corruption. It's more important that we make more noise and do something about it. And I made up my mind that I possibly will never be known for And it says, when you do those three things, them not to distort justice and not to show partiality. So there's no one single thing that we can do to fix this. It's a multiple of things. Complex because it involves those in power and those who are not in power. About an attire, so that my context and my people, for that matter, can appreciate that I've written, and I will just mention a few things and urge you, if you have not read my book, to take time and read. I did from somewhere else, maybe through our airport, carrying wrong things. It's not a national issue alone. It is transnational, intercountry, global. So we're doing this work. And one of the things that, I was asking, what are you doing about corruption? And he told me that they are focusing on high-level cases, the substantive stuff. And what it does, actually, technology, it can get away what we call the bureaucratic intermediaries and the red tape vulnerabilities. These are people coming between processes just to slow. You will agree with me if you have been subjected to corruption, because I have many times. The catch is delay. I can't get your file. You can't get your passport today because they know you are flying tomorrow. And that creates unnecessary pressure. I was reading the Ethics and Corruption Report 2019, and about 48% of the people that were giving reasons for bribing they said because of delay. In other words, they create so much pressure for you that you feel like if I don't give something, then something will go wrong. Now, what technology will do, and that's what has happened in countries like Singapore and the rest, and Australia and such, that have managed to beat the game as much. And I'm not saying they are not corrupt, they are. Because it depends again on what we measure as corruption.
I'm privileged to have you. And before I invite our keynotes, how many are we here? I'm guessing maybe 100 or so in this room. That movement should begin here. This is not just a book launch. This is really a call to action for us to stand up and have a voice against corruption. Alcio.
Doctor, sometimes you come wittingly or unwittingly. Sometimes you come wittingly or unwittingly. Friends, Dr. Anna, Senator Mutula, my very good friend. You don't need to apologize. It's okay. When they decided to make King of Maragoli, then I was entitled to surpass.
Because the women feel the pain of corruption. We feel the pain as men, but we pretend we don't. But allow me to ask, just pose questions, generally. And I mentioned this to Stan, allow me to call you that. That's all right. While we were doing the budget policy statement yesterday, Senator Orengo posed this question. How is it that we worship thieves? How is it that the people who steal the most get to the front page of the newspapers, and these people get the most attention? I said, if you don't steal in Kenya, you will never find yourself in a headline. And I've said this before, and I can say this on record. I've gone for a meeting, and somebody comes and there are ululations and there was dust. And then this governor appears, and I thought, wait a damn minute. This person has been charged for very atrocious crimes, but he's a hero to Kenyans and other MPs and leaders. Are we, people sitting here, are we co-accomplices to corruption in Kenya? Is this country going to change when at the bottom she says, in Anne says the ethical part, which I would have put first, but since it's attire and the E comes last, are we going to choose leaders based on their ethical standards?
Of course, as I said, Africa is the leading, most corrupt continent in the world. And we look at the Transparency International data all the way from 2015 to date. And so for me as an African, it bothers me that my continent is in that sorry state. So I chose them to speak and amplify my voice regarding what, in my view, is a modern day cancer for our development. And so, as I said, corruption is a complex issue, and complex things are not addressed with linear solutions. In other words, you can't pick one single thing to address it. So I decided to look at what I considered as core in the fight against corruption. And so I looked at all the dynamics that are involved: people, technology, cultures, issues of culture, issues to do with young people who are the biggest population. So basically, if I may summarize in brief to say the six elements that I looked up to or looked after, which I framed in the style of attire, was to look at, the first one is about partnerships. And that's where the word A stands for alliance. Alliance as partnerships, because corruption is a cross-cutting issue, locally, internationally, and so you can't beat it alone. It needs resources, competencies, commitments, so that partnership. And then number two is to look at the biggest population today that it is affected and will be affected. And so we can't fight corruption by ignoring that particular population. That's a millennium, but I call them Timo millennium. And then after that, I say technology is critical, because the technology helps us in efficiency. It removes the bureaucracies and people sit in and create reasons for corruption. So once we bring in technology, then in that case, we make sure that there's efficiency, there's accountability, but there is also no blockages, no resource to create corruption. And then the other issue that I looked at are issues to do innovation culture. As I mentioned sometimes earlier, that Africa is not mainly used to culture of corruption. We tend to do innovations. We're not used to a culture of innovation. We tend to do innovations in a sporadic way, and that doesn't sustain change. Change requires that there is a culture of investing, looking at new things. And when we talk of innovation, it doesn't mean we go big time. There are those gradual, there are those semi-radical, and then the radical ones. So we can go slow, but still make a change. And then corruption is a moral issue, so you cannot change, you can't treat morality without issues of spirituality or faith. So I acknowledge, as a believer, for example, as a Christian, one who believes in the Christian faith, I know how faith has shaped my life. And so, and when I talk of religiosity, I don't mean necessarily Christian faith. There are Muslims, there are Hindus, they believe, and those faiths shape their thinking. So it's an issue of giving people an opportunity to be able to allow faith to speak into their core, which is the principal center, so that we are people who have deep-seated values that are solid, and virtues that are cardinal, and they can make decisions from that. And finally, which to me would have been the first one, is about ethical leadership. Ethics is about what's right and what's wrong, period. And all of us know what that is. And we need to be able to stand firm as leaders and say, corruption is not the right thing. Ethically, it's wrong. And so there are different types of leadership, but purely we need to be able to come out as leaders and say this is wrong. And it starts from the top. So basically, it's all those partnership, technology, millennials, innovation culture, religiosity at the workplace, and ethical leadership. So basically, those are my proposals. As I said, we have demystified corruption in Kenya. The reason why the political goodwill is important in fighting is because leaders have resources, power, and influence. And when you have those three, you can turn around the turbine. So yes, we need political goodwill, and the top is very critical. If there is no change at the top, it's going to be very difficult to have change at the bottom. So yes, I agree. We need not just political, but a very serious political goodwill and commitment. It has to start at the top. When people say we glorify corruption, I think one of the ways, I don't think the common person glorifies corruption, because how would I benefit by celebrating the person who has stolen from me? I think it needs to be looked differently, that the media needs to report it from a different perspective and not give a lot of audience to people that have stolen. I think media needs to be fighting corruption in a different way. In my view, they tend to flag, and it's not the common person who flags, it's the media. And media is a very key player. What media, flags, it is bought. So I think the media needs to come as a very strong key player in the partnership that I'm talked about, and make a very firm decision and make a choice and decide we are not going to glorify or flag or give a lot of audience to people who are corrupt. We will actually not. So that way, then possibly they are just in courts, because when we begin to flag them, we are telling our young people something, that either when you steal, you will get a lot of attention, and really that's not the case. So I look at media as a very, very key player in fighting corruption. You see, as I said, it's not so much of the system. There are many different systems that come in place. We have a very good constitution. Forget about even BBI. If we just implemented our current constitution to the core, for example, we would fight corruption. So I don't think the challenge in most cases is even in the BBI or any other system. It will be BBI today, it possibly will be whatever another name tomorrow. I guess it's a goodwill, it's a commitment with the leaders, because it doesn't matter which system they put in place. It is the people that needs to make the change. So as far as I'm concerned, I'll not even blame the BBI, because people are constantly looking for solutions. But the question is, are we identifying the core issue and fighting it? Because corruption will still be there, irrespective of what system we bring, if we are not committed as leaders to get to the roots and, unearth it.
Excellent. Good occasion to witness the launching of this book by Dr. Kyoya on tackling corruption in Africa. A well-researched book that now offers solutions across the board, and even actually suggests things that we never think about, including religion as a way of fighting corruption. And therefore, it's a breath of fresh air from the usual things about jailing people, etc., to a change of culture, and even uses words like attire. The way, how important it is for you to look is as a method of advancing the fight against corruption. Dr. Kyoya has, while admitting that this vice she's speaking to leaders, Dr. Kyoya speaks to all of you. I can assure you, when you read this book, you'll find a paragraph, a line that talks about you as a person, and your role against fighting this corruption in Kenya, and making sure that we live a country for our generations that is not corrupt, because that corruption, while it is practiced at whatever level, has an effect on you and your grandchildren. And therefore I'm very proud of Dr. Kyoya for taking this very, very bold step of talking to corruption to leaders, and talking to corruption to even the church leaders, and therefore offers solutions. We have all been lamenting. The fight against corruption in Kenya has been a book of lamentations, lamenting without solutions. Dr. Kyoya has given you solutions. She has given us 6. Your work is to make them 10. But start with yourself. Start with you. Corruption starts with you. Right there at home, are you corrupt? In your house, are you corrupt? In your church, have you invited corruption to sit with you? In your government, in your business, at home, in your family? That's what Kyoya is saying. She's saying, wear the cloth, attire, start by you, but involve the youth, involve the young people. Give them an opportunity to give us technological solutions of making sure that everything is efficient. Just make everything efficient. Give the youth something to do. Instead of telling the youth we are going to give you jobs, give them an opportunity to innovate solutions about tackling corruption by making sure that government is efficient. Corruption in Kenya has been given many names. Euphemism. It has been glorified. It has been clothed. It has been dressed. Corruption is walking, and therefore, the minute you unmask corruption the way Anto has unmasked corruption, then you begin to address the problem by first of all admitting, by saying, I am corrupt, I am corrupt, I am corrupt, I am going to change. Then you unmask the corruption, and then we don't clothe it with small euphemisms, kitu kidogo, kitu kubwa, chai, mafuta, those things. Is what is actually perpetuating corruption in whatever form, small and big. Thank you. Against corruption has bedeviled this country for a long time. And it's good that people are now writing about it. They are now talking about it and even offering solutions. Because for the longest time we have always been condemning one another, condemning leaders, condemning churches, professionals, but never offering solutions or suggesting what can be done to tackle corruption. And therefore, when we begin to write about it, when we begin to admit, like the author has admitted and said, and to quote the Bible, all of us are corrupt and fallen short.
Yes.
The minute the fight against corruption in Kenya will begin when we all admit that vice affects all of us. The rich, the poor, the leaders, the non-leaders are all affected.
Yes.
And therefore it's something that we need to change.
Yeah.
And the minute we admit, we start training and teaching our children that corruption is a sin.
Yeah.
You begin there, then you have a starting point.
Absolutely.
And that starting point is the most important thing.
Excellent.
And the fact that it is coming from not a politician, not government. Because the minute it comes from government, it appears as if you're doing their usual PR. But it is coming from a private citizen. Then you begin to take it seriously.
Absolutely.
Anything has taken leadership on the fight against corruption. And therefore I'm simply saying that even in our fight at the national level, to have women in leadership begins in things like this, in action points, fighting corruption, advancing causes of women, advancing causes of youth, advancing causes against tribalism. This is a starting point. And I would like to congratulate her for taking a very bold step. A lot of women would not talk about corruption in the manner that she has. And if you read the book and the examples cited all over Africa, it's a well-researched document that speaks to us in person. If you read the book, you will find a place where it mentions you as a person. It talks about leadership, but you will find a paragraph talking about you in the book. In the book.
BBI will triple corruption in Kenya because BBI will increase the wage bill of holders of public office. BBI will make it more difficult for the common man to access services in government. It will make it very expensive for the common man to maintain the expanded offices either in the executive or in the legislature. Have you asked yourself, has there been expansion in the judiciary? Has there been expansion in the independent commission? No. Expansion is only targeted at the legislature and the executive. Those are the conduits of corruption. And I plead with Kenyans not to do what members of county assemblies have done, not to fall into the trap that members of parliament are likely to fall into. When, if at all, this question is brought to you, Wanjiku, Onyango, Wafula, Ali, or Hassan, you need to reject it. It's not viable. Look at the national debt now. We are barely surviving. How will we pull through with such an increased expenditure in the implementation of the constitutional changes proposed to be brought by BBI? We will die. will cease to exist as a country. In Kenya, corruption is glorified instead of being fought because those at the helm of leadership in the country have transformed the fight against corruption to one of suppression. Because in actual fact, corruption can only be gotten rid of in this country when those who have the highest responsibility of upholding the Constitution, ensuring integrity and accountability, perform their duty. But what do we see? We see rampant abuse of state power, we see rampant theft of public resources, and we see a situation whereby when those who hold the highest responsibility are called upon to investigate this matter, they just sanitize it. That is why we have time without number insisted that the war against corruption is not a genuine war, it's sanitization. Perhaps we need to change the paradigm and have a shift towards a transformative approach in fighting corruption. If you are to ask for my opinion, most of those people who hold the highest offices in this land ought not to be in office for corruption to be fought. For as long as they remain in office, corruption will never be fought. There is no political goodwill for the fight because who are the biggest beneficiaries of corruption in Kenya? Look at the way public procurement is undertaken. Look at the big contracts. Who is behind them? Who is behind SGR? Who is behind KEMSA? Now we're being told they want to start tendering for the COVID-19 vaccine. Who is behind that? It's not Mama Mboga. It's not you and I who can participate in such a lucrative businesses that involve the government. It is the people who are in government. Therein lies the problem. We have lost the war. It will take us a long period of time for us to have a semblance of a real fight against corruption. And it is imperative that young people in Kenya realize that this is the time for them to refuse to be taken for granted, to refuse to be used as a conduit of corruption. And corruption does not entail only the pilferage of public resources. Corruption entails a scenario where we have leaders who do not qualify for leadership ascending to positions of leadership. Corruption entails those who are in a leadership practicing cronyism and ethnicity in the allocation of resources, in the appointment of individuals to serve in certain offices. Therein lies corruption. And how do we enable corruption? People of our generation enable corruption when we accede to the demands, to the coercion, to the seduction of those who are in power, to enable them continue being in office, to manipulate the laws, to create laws that are only conducive for them to thrive in a corrupt environment. Yet, we are the ones who propel the push towards the transformation of these ideas that they seek to mislead us on, saying that this is the change we want to bring, yet in actual fact, it is entrenching corruption.
Base yetu yawaletea Shujaa wa Base Pool Table Championships Meru Edition. Tuma wachezaji wawili gwiji kutoka base yako. Tarehe 8 hadi 14 Machi mwaka huu na mshinde hafamili 200k ama 100k. Ni tarehe 8 hadi 14 Machi mwaka huu pale Gitoro Conference Hall Makutano. Vunja weka wa. Dial *483 *8888 hash kuregister base yako.